Afternoon, everyone. Our meeting is called to order, and I first want to just give us an overview of the agenda for this afternoon, and then we'll get started with our first item. We have a rather long day planned, afternoon and evening, but we're going to begin with item 2.01, our summer school report. That will include the district-wide report as well as the PB Young program that I think we're all really excited about. And as well, we'll transition from, and we have 1 hour designated for the summer school report, and we'll go right to our strategic plan, year one implementation, this first quarter's report. If you noticed, we have designated 3 hours for that segment, and we've taken 30 minutes off of the policy review, so we'll certainly have to exercise some discipline to get the policies done in 30 minutes. Most of the policies, all except, I believe, one or two, are just recommended revisions from VSBA, and so while I'm sure some of them will be topics of interest that we rarely ever get to discuss, we'll have to avoid the temptation of discussing them too much if we're going to stay on target and on time. And then we'll move to a school board recognition that will begin at 6, and then, of course, our first public budget hearing for this school year. Having said that, we'll turn it over to Dr. King, who will introduce our first presenters.
Dr. Houston, before you move forward, I know that your agenda has been set. Just want to point out to you that talked with Deborah Keys from the Virginia School Board Association, and she emphasized the importance of us passing the code of ethics. Right. And so she came to me and told me that that's a very important thing for us to do. So I don't know whether we have time in our agenda today to do that or not, but at some point, I just wanted you to know how important she said that was for us to do.
Right, and I've spoken with her about it, and actually I intended to include it in the email so that we can submit our comments, so that when we come together we can easily adopt it without an hour, 2 hours discussion. We just don't have the liberty of for that. But it is an important piece that we complete as soon as possible. I'm thinking maybe on the 13th we might be able to, if we get our comments emailed in between now and next Wednesday. We'll be hard pressed to include it tonight. And I did bring actually the copy along with Mr. Jordan's recommended changes today. Okay. But thank you. I appreciate you bringing it up, but I doubt very seriously we'll have the time to get after it today.
All right, so just to be clear, Janelle, is it something that you can send back to all of us, and then by what time do you want the comments back from us?
If the comments could be back by Monday, and that way we could consolidate those comments before next week's board meeting, and hopefully it won't be a great departure from what we already have. If it is, it's going to require a good deal of dialogue, which can be a time consumer. So, but if we could get those comments in by next Monday, to me that would be good.
So Janelle, would you mind sending those out ASAP? So, okay, thank you.
Okay. Right, Dr. King.
Chairman Houston, members of the board, and guests. At this point, we would like to take the opportunity to, as a portion of 2.01, to give a comprehensive report, full view from an aerial standpoint of summer school. And I'll begin by reminding all of us as stakeholders that a major objective as it relates to summer school is to begin the whole process of linking areas of concern / deficiencies linked to deficient standards and roll out a customized summer program that allows us to increase the percentage of students meeting and exceeding standards. So I am encouraged by the progress that we've made from a structural standpoint with beginning to do so. So with that said, I will defer to Dr. Savigny to begin.
Thank you. like to welcome our guest. Our first presenters this afternoon will be our delegation from the United Way and one of our very own principals who piloted a unique opportunity for our children this summer at PB Young Elementary, and they are here to give us an update and overview report as to how that transpired and the results of that summer opportunity for our students. So, Carol, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. We are delighted to be here. Dr. King, members of the school board. And first up is that I would like to introduce the chair of our United for Children effort. That's what we call it, and that is Lewis Webb. So Lewis is going to begin for us, and if you will, we've passed around our presentation for today so you can take notes on it, and you can take it with you, and so you have it for future references.
So I'm going to start us off, but get out of the way very quickly, because the real substance is to my left, on both sides to the left. I'm a volunteer with United Way on this pilot program we call United for Children, and we're going to present to you one chapter of what we hope is an ongoing story of trying to affect in neighborhoods, help parents turn around a neighborhood and help a neighborhood produce great students, great workers, and great citizens. And this is sort of a beginning part. This is our first chapter, and the first chapter starts with summer school at PB Young for us. So you've got in front of you materials that we're going to walk you through. I want to start with you on page 1, because this is sort of our challenge on the first story, and that's summer school learning loss. If you look at the first graph, if I'm an average middle-income student, I begin first grade, I learn. In the summer, I go horizontal. Second grade, I pick back up, I go horizontal. I pick back up, I go horizontal. If I'm a low-income student, however, the national studies show that I have slippage. And so as you can see based on the graph, my differential between the middle-income student and the low-income student broadens every single year. That is a tremendous challenge, and you can see the cumulative effect. We've just done it K through 4. The cumulative effect all the way through high school is tremendous and puts a tremendous challenge on that child getting into college and going into the workforce. So that was our primary challenge, as well as others, thinking about what we were going to create for summer school. The slide on the bottom is our statistics on the neighborhood that we were looking at. And the neighborhood is Young Terrace, probably 3 blocks from here. Fairly typical neighborhood with relation to a project household. Average household income less than $12,000 per year. 50% of the adults in the neighborhood have no high school degree or GED. We know based on the studies that this is highly predictive of the likelihood or unlikelihood of success of the child going forward. This is one of the poorest 1% neighborhoods in the U.S. 460 of the local neighborhood kids go to the local elementary school. That's PB Young, Dr. Baltazar here, and then they come from there to here in Ruffner, and then from Ruffner over to Booker T, where, as we know, major dropout rate, highest in the region, only 64% on-time graduation. So we chose this neighborhood intentionally. We chose it collaboratively. If we think if we can make a difference here, and that's why we're running a pilot program, we think we can make a difference in practically any neighborhood. So into this challenge space, we introduced Dr. Baltazar, who will start to walk us through what we created sort of from whole cloth to see what makes sense in the neighborhood.
Good afternoon, Dr. King, board members, staff members of NPS. Basically, I just wanted to kind of highlight some of the summer school highlights that were there that make us a very authentic program, unlike the traditional program that we have typically during the school year. And so some of those summer highlights you'll hear are a little different from what happens in your traditional 4-week program. One, it was designed by teachers and parents. We called meetings, advisory meetings. We had interest surveys for the students as well as the parents, and they were the stakeholders. That's how we were able to get the buy-in. was designed by them. It was a 5-day-a-week program for 8 weeks, whereas a traditional is 4 weeks. We had an extension by an additional 4. We had 4 hours Montessori-style academics Monday through Thursday, which are basically cooperative learning and kinesthetic activities. Daily earned enrichment on Fridays, whereas the summer school programs typically ended on Thursday. We were still there on Friday for an enrichment portion there, which also connected to our district initiative of PBIS. Many of the programs that we put in place monitor that piece to help us to be able to see which students will be able to attend on the Friday piece, which had, flag football, creative dance, steel drums, just a plethora of activities that they were earned. We had a memorandum of agreement with parents about attendance, behavior, and the coursework. Again, collaboration in the beginning. 2/3 of the students attended the voluntary program. Out of 470 students, we had close to 300, 292, 2/3 of that attended, and it was, voluntary. We also had a blended budget using existing resources, the highest and best use of our current resources. The partners contributed to the integrated results-driven project, as well as the United Way secured additional funding for our program. So that shows how we were a little different from our traditional summer school program. If you look at the next slide, yes, tired but happy, yes. All of the partners listed here, 17 plus, did not just contribute monetarily, they were on site. Yes, every symbol represented here played a facet in the program, not just financially, but they were visible and they worked with students. So imagine, to a parent, to a student, the community came in and served as teachers and stepped in the role that teachers tend to play. So that was phenomenal to see. And again, Trinity Presbyterian organized the afternoon piece as well as the Friday piece and linked it up with every partner that was here, and they were on site. Thank you.
So now it's my turn. One of the things I do want to reiterate that Principal Balthazar was talking about, the teachers deserve a lot of credit. We're not educators. By any stretch, we are not educators. What we do understand is the needs of kids. And we understand that we have a place in this community, the United Way does, to connect the dots and to use the relationships we have to the benefit of our children and to the success of our children. And so I really want to reiterate the fact that the teachers designed this, they designed it with the parents, and then our job was to pull in all the various groups that could come together and be a part of it. And so I'm going to take you to the next slides, but before I do, I have one other piece with this. These activities that the children had from the various groups that came forward, and the arts, the flag football, the et cetera, the ability for the teachers, and they've told us this over and over again, the ability for the teachers to say to them, look, if you're not here on time, if you're not getting this done, then you don't get to go play flag football, or you don't get to go play steel drums, or you don't get to do this on Friday, was incredibly beneficial. And so the teacher said over and over again, typically, what we do when we talk about behavior problems, it's the negative. If you don't do this, you get to go see Principal Balthazar. Not that that's a negative, we love to see her. But for the child, that's a trouble piece, whereas the positive is I get to earn this. So those earned activities were extremely important, and the teachers over and over again have said to us, thank you so much for bringing that. Please don't ever take that component of it away. And we all know that children need joy in their lives, no matter what. And so if you will look to the next page, it is page 3. We're going to talk to you about the results of it. By the way, the behavior results, which is what I was just going to get to say, is Principal Balthazar has told us that on a typical day, she has 3 to 5 referrals from children, from the teachers and issues with the children. At least last year, that was the circumstances. Over the summer, the children that we had, and what we found out is we had overwhelmingly the children of parents who did not work, which we did not realize that when we started this process out. So the situation she had over the summer, she only had 3 times did she receive a referral. So we went from 3 to 5 a day to 3 times in 8 weeks. And a lot of that was because the teachers had this ability to say, you know, you gotta shape up or you don't get to go do this. And if you don't do that in your own household with your own children, I would be very surprised, because I did that a lot with mine. So if you look on page 3, the first thing we're going to show you is the reading growth. And the goal, if you look down on the lower left-hand side, the goal for us was just not to lose ground. That was what we wanted to see happen. And so we thought, gee, if we can just hang on and not lose ground, these kids are going to be so much better off. And it was worth doing the program just for that. And so you can see what the results of that were, is that not only did we not lose ground for any of the children, but many of the classes actually saw some fairly significant gains. I do need to point out the difference between the first grade and the third grade, and we'll come back to that in a minute, but I do want you to note that. Down to the mathematics, again, the same situation. Can we not lose ground? And you can see not only did we not lose ground, but some of the classes did extremely well. One of the things that we noted in this is that because of the way we designed this program, the principal had not only the ability to select teachers, but to remove teachers if it wasn't working well. And so the third grade teacher, that just didn't turn out to be the right match. The first grade teacher, by the way, was Montessori certified teacher. So when we talk about Montessori-like schools and this hands-on, minds-on, how does that work? Look what these kids did when they had a teacher who was actually certified in it. So it was very significant for us to see the results of that. There's a question over here.
Dr. Balthazar, you mentioned that you had 290 some children
Yes.
in the program. What was the student-teacher ratio? How many teachers were in the program?
question.
We had the class size, typically what we run here, the 19 students with 1 teacher, and we also had teachers' assistants in the room with them.
Full-time, all day?
Yes.
In each class? Okay, but we typically don't have that in our first, second, third, fourth, or fifth.
No.
Okay, and so there's 19 students to 1 teacher, and how many classrooms do we have?
This summer, did we have?
Mhm.
We had 23.
23, okay. Okay, thank you.
You have other questions? Okay. And so that was the results of the summer school. If you look on your back, though, there's one other, the next page, rather, there's one other thing that we wanted to share with you. You know, Mr. Webb talked about the fact that this is a collective impact piece, which really, the purpose of this is gathering the resources in the community for the benefit of our children and the benefit of the schools. And so one of the things that we were able to do is to put a computer lab into PB Young. United Way wrote a grant to the Beasley Foundation. We had the Life Enrichment Center was the organization that we chose to put the computer lab in with, and they did an amazing job of making that happen and helping to recruit volunteers. And if you look on this page, number 4, there are lots of ways we could slice and dice data. There's so much that obviously the school has that they could share with you. We're trying to figure out some highlight pieces. So one of the things that, quite frankly, our board found very interesting was the self-motivated student. So when you look at this, the number of lab visits, we had almost 1,900 lab visits from students who were doing this on their own. This is not the classroom visit. This is, I'm going before school, I'm going after school, I'm going on my own time to be able to go into the lab and work on the computers, which I think it says a lot about these students. And it also tells you how valuable having a computer lab is to these students. And so the computer teacher actually told us that class usually starts, the school starts at 9:30. He ended up at times coming in at 7:30 in the morning because the kids were coming in. They were coming in earlier and earlier wanting to get on those computer labs. And so then if you look down to the next slide, this is the average growth in the Lexile score, because as you know, the kids use Achieve 3000. They use it just like it's a video game. They brag about their scores, and so these kids were very involved in it, and they were very excited to be a part of that. and you can see what a difference that makes. So from a community perspective, not a school perspective at this point, it was an honor to be able to make sure that that computer lab existed for these kids. And we can now say to donors as we go forward, look what a difference it makes. When you give these kids the opportunity, they will take it. And this just one opportunity made a significant difference for these kids. So we were thrilled to be a part of this. I'm going to hand it back over to the principal to do a sort of a final piece about where we are now.
Okay, thank you. And basically, where are we now? Again, as mentioned, we were a pilot program for the summer. We met the goal of no summer slippage, which was our goal and our purpose, so we're excited about that. And implications for the new school year, we're really looking at now with being a school that it is in school improvement, as well as what we've been doing ongoing with the support of our executive directors and the central office staff members that come in and meet with us. We have to make sure those students that were a part of the program did this align with where we are with the district level CFAs and ultimately how this will impact the SOL assessments at the end of the year. Based on the summer participation. We're also tracking these students by tiers, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, looking at the students from the summer. Where are they now that school has started? Losing that, did they not lose the summer slippage, and did they go and jump right to a tier 1 or a tier 2? So we're really digging in deep with the data to also offset this piece. Again, as you mentioned, with the behavior piece, our district-wide initiative with PBIS, we have the Care Now counseling advocates from Old Dominion on site in our building in every 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade classroom so that teachers are able to teach. Any students tend to get off task, they are redirected so that the teacher is definitely able to continue on with the lesson. So a lot of the pieces that we saw this summer carried right over into a smooth transition for the school year, and we are monitoring this data to see how it aligns with our district level CFAs, which I know is an ultimate decision and result that we must see. Thank you.
Questions?
Thank you. Yes. Noel?
Going back to slides 5 and 6, the reading growth and the mathematics growth, you had mentioned that the 3rd grade for reading and then the 2nd and 3rd grade for math, that as I'm looking at the slide, it says no growth, 0%. But when you all are teaching the material, and I know that it's parent-driven and teacher-driven, is the curriculum for rising 2nd graders, or is the curriculum for what materials they did not master in the 2nd grade? Because the 0 probably is, I'm being optimistic and saying I'm sure that the kids benefited, and I'm sure that they learned things that they probably didn't have mastered beforehand. So if you could clarify those couple of pieces for me, that would be wonderful.
Can I just piggyback on that? Because I had a similar question. So along with that, so the growth is where you were to where you are, but can you also speak to any raw scores? So are we finding that we had children who were above grade level, who then had growth above grade level, or do we find children who were at different points? So we saw growth, but how does that play into where they actually need to be in terms of success as they move forward?
Great questions. Again, we considered it a continuation of the school year. So if they were a 2nd grader, they were a 2nd grader. That's how these classes were set up. But to answer your question about the data and how they were grouped, we found that because we opened it up to all of the students, if they were an entering tier 1 student, as if they were in pre-K, we moved them in this 8 weeks, we moved them over to a kindergarten classroom. Or if we found students that came in as a tier 1 student, they also were bumped up. So we had true multi-age going on this summer.
Oh,
So the children were taught 2nd grade material if they were in the 2nd grade?
Yes.
Okay.
okay. Yeah. I had some. So you asked about the raw scores. You had mentioned the Montessori style academics. So can you talk about the training that your staff received with the Montessori style, how they felt about it, how parents felt about it? Has it been embraced? Any pushback or anything? Just trying to get a feel for, I mean, you were on, I think it was Channel 10, and they were talking about the impact of the Montessori style, and you also mentioned having that one certified instructor. But can you talk more about the training that was received and in that whole process?
Sure. The staff has not gone through the Montessori transformation training as of yet. The teacher that, if you look at the data for the first grade, worked in another school district where they had the Montessori training, as well as I had one on kindergarten as well. But as a school, we just adopted the concepts of cooperative learning and the kinesthetic activities, but we have not had, as a school, the formal Montessori training.
And
We just adopted the concepts.
also, on the partners, I used to serve on the Housing Authority Board, so.
Oh, wonderful.
Have,
They've been a great partner.
yeah, I didn't see on the list of partners, the Tenant Management Council listed. What type of resident participation do you all have on your steering committee and partner participation?
That's a great question. We actually, what we have done with that is to talk to the residents and have the residents tell us what they would like to have, how they would like to see it articulated, and they are integrated into part of the school. So they have, for example, the school has the Watchdog Dads, which has been very significant in terms of being able to give us information, being able to give feedback, and being a cooperative partner with that. Our goal is not to create new, but to work with what is there and to serve the people who are there. So we create an infrastructure. We're not trying to create a new program, a new policy. We're trying to work with the people who are there and what exists.
And by the way, I should have started by saying thank you for the work and all the success that's being demonstrated here. I'm a tech guy, so the computer lab piece is of interest to me, and I know the good work that Reverend Turpin does with
Great job.
Life Enrichment Center. But I am concerned, maybe someone else can address the fact that you didn't have the computer lab to start with. So can you, maybe the principal or someone else can just speak to, are there any other technological deficiencies that exist at PB Young Elementary that we need to be addressing now so that those children have equitable opportunities to be successful in sustaining this work moving forward?
And I'm glad to be able to sit here before you and say right now we don't, thanks to Dr. Simmons and Andrea Sequoia. Anytime we had an issue pertaining to technology, we want to try this software because our parents are coming in. They were both Johnny on the spot, technician concerns, everything addressed. Right now, I'm glad to sit here and say, no, we're up and rolling.
Good to hear.
Also, in response, Reverend Turpin wanted, that organization wanted to make a contribution to a school and selected PB Young.
Right.
So what he did was above and beyond the norm.
Yeah.
I would add that I don't think we are where we need to be, and we are moving in that direction.
Thank you.
I would think that. If I may, just real quickly with the teachers, because we do a pre and post test discussions with the teachers by ourselves too. So it's, just to hear from them directly. And the teachers were very excited about this summer and thrilled with this summer because they designed it. It was theirs. They owned it. But the other thing that I thought was interesting is several of them said, this new style of teaching, I'm used to standing up in front of the class and lecturing. And so instead, I'm interacting with the kids in a very different way. They thought it was very positive, and it was a great experience for them. And many of them said, I really don't want to go back to the other way of teaching. But at first it was scary. I mean, some of them said, first couple of weeks, boy, this is so different than what I'm used to doing. but they also felt like it was really why they went to school and became teachers, and they really enjoyed the summer. And so the feedback was very positive from them. But again, they designed it, so I would hope it would be.
I do want to thank you. I'll start off by saying thank you on my comments. But really, it's tremendous the work that you did and the folks that you pulled around the table. So Mr. Webb, thank you for yours. Principal Balthazar, thank you. I also want to call out Sarah Bishop because I know she worked very
Yes.
closely with a team to make this all happen. And I know it takes truly a village to make this happen. So I just wanted to say thank you initially. A few questions. What was the total cost of the program in terms of the full resource-intensive nature of it, everything that it took to make this happen? Because in my mind, what we need to do is scale it and sustain it. So while successful at PB Young, how is it we can do it at other schools, in other communities, and sustain it so it's not a one-time shot in the dark? So if you could answer that. And then my second question is, you clearly had great success with discipline in the summer. I'd like to know what's your discipline been like since you've been back in school?
Again, a smooth transition, basically, because we had 2/3 of them all summer. They were just off, maybe a week and a half. So it's really helped the majority to just flow with school rules, transitions, and peer relationships. It's been ongoing, been there forever.
It's going to take to, scale this elsewhere.
Okay, so that's an interesting piece. We're actually meeting tomorrow to sort of design that up in terms of what it would look like if we expanded it. And here's why. I can give you exactly what it was last summer for this school. I can tell you that there's no way, if we were going to do 15 schools, that the community has that many resources that are for free. You're going to eventually use up what the arts organizations have. You're going to use up and so one of the things we're doing tomorrow is looking at that and saying, when we scale, what's the other expenses? I can tell you for what we spent on summer school, what we did was everybody put in what they could put in, whether it wasn't really cash put in, it was all of these resources put in. And the delta ended up being $136,000. So we looked at it and said, for lack of $136,000, we weren't going to have summer school for 8 weeks for almost 300 kids. And we were very fortunate that Joan and Macon Brock paid for it then. And so when we talk about scalability, we can't just, though, look at what we did at PB Young and assume that it's that price at every school. One of the things I will say about this, and one of the reasons those extra activities are so important, this is voluntary.
Yeah.
Absolutely voluntary. To have this many kids show up, get out of bed every day, get their parents, get them out of bed, and take them to school every day for a voluntary program, we had to really be on our game. Yeah. And the kids had to enjoy what they were doing. And so it's really important that all of those things exist within a school for a summer school to be really productive. And so I wish I could tell you the answer right now, but probably within the next couple of weeks, we ought to have it penciled out pretty close.
Good. And in terms of your parent engagement, I think that's a huge model that we need to consider as we look at the Transformation Initiative and as we look at parent compacts, what was successful there that we can model in these parent compacts at these other schools as well.
And one point, we rolled this out on a nip and a tuck, ended up with a beautiful end result, but a lot of the kids that did not come were not kids that stayed at home, they were pre-committed to other activities.
Okay.
So knowing next year that we will be here, our anticipation, our attendance will be much higher than the 2/3 we got.
We had about 100 kids over at Parks and Rec, which was right across the street. The working parents, of course, secured their space at Parks and Rec early because they knew that they were going to need childcare for the summer. So one of the other things that we have learned, and the other thing we have to figure out with budgeting, is that we at least have to have, at the minimum, custodial care earlier and later for those parents who work. So part of this is, for us, it's a continuous improvement loop. We did this 1 year. We need to figure out what was great and where we need to tweak it. Parks and Recs has said to us, because they are at the table, the city is at the table, that they want to, now that we're going to be there this summer, they want to make sure that the elementary kids come over to us so that they do get the academics, because they're not getting academics at Parks and Rec. and that they'll look towards, with an eye towards doing a really great middle school age program over at Parks and Rec. And so that makes it a different continuum.
Thank you again. I mean, I'm just very impressed.
I also want to thank you for the work that you did for the students there in Young's Terrace. And also Sarah Bishop that's out there. I want to thank her for all of the hard work that she and her organization brought. We could tell at the transformational initiative rollout over at Young's Park, where all the parents came and were involved with that there was a different spirit as a result of what happened in the summer program. I'm particularly real happy to see the involvement of the community in this program. I know the Trinity Presbyterian has been there for a number of years, and to see now that the school is partnering in this part of the summer program is to me very important. And so I want to thank Trinity Presbyterian for the work that they have done. And also the business community, the art community, and that's just an excellent thing. Also heard in your discussions about the PBIS and how that you are using these incentives to really advance the work of PBIS. So I think that that's just outstanding. I was wondering if this is a model for the transformational schools. Do you see this as the way that the transformational school will be rolled out, or is this how the kind of involvement and partnership that you're thinking?
Yes.
Who you asking?
I think
I'm not really sure
should
who I
answer
should
that
ask
one.
that
I'm not certain
question
who should
to.
answer
Maybe
that.
I should
I
ask
think
it
that's your
to
answer.
the superintendent.
Can I defer that to
Yeah.
It absolutely has the tenets of the recommendations from the Transformation Initiative, and you touched on many of them already in terms of the partnership and the sponsorship, the collaboration between the school community and other entities to work for an aligned purpose. And for this purpose, Montessori strategies were discussed as a part of, and only really two major pieces in terms of the collaborative piece that research really clearly states that allows you to secure a higher rate of retention of knowledge, and the tactile kinesthetic piece, which is the hands-on problem solving. And so that's what gave it, this pilot has given us a good snapshot of the return on that investment and what that could mean.
So you train the teachers in those two pieces of the Montessori concept. Do you expect to be training them further in other pieces of the Montessori concept?
We're now, of course, you all allowed us to go into the next phase of planning. So we're discussing, just what would be the next best step across the board for that. And as Dr. Baltazar stated, we've not done overall training of first staff in these concepts at this point. And I think out of the total number of teachers, maybe two of the teachers that were a part of this staff had already been trained. However, the emphasis for the remainder of the staff centered on collaborative engagement instead of lecture, as you heard them mention, and on the tactile kinesthetic strategies, which also are a part of the Montessori concept as well. So we're looking at what the next best step will be for rollout across the board for our team.
So you mentioned that this is a pilot program. So I'm understanding then that as Courtney was mentioning, the scaling of the program that you're expecting to move out, do you have any idea of how many schools you're going to look at for next summer to do this with?
No. Don't know the answer to that question as of yet. We're kind of costing out some
Yeah,
pieces
no, I
and that
mean,
kind of
you
thing, so-
said pilot, so I'm just wondering what.
Yeah. One thing I think is important to keep in mind, and we have not, and I'll take responsibility for it, done a really good job of really keeping the board up to speed on United for Children. because this is really an outgrowth of the United for Children initiative, let me say. And a part of that was to select one school, one community, and really develop the model. And so the model obviously isn't fully developed with 1 year. So you're talking about really looking at long-term impact and effect over a couple of years, and so getting it right kind of in this neighborhood now. Then as we're able to replicate, look at how it can be implemented in other schools. Of course, now you're talking about district-wide funding, and I'll say this while I'm making this comment. This is the fourth time I've had the opportunity to receive this presentation, and the third time was at the Mayor's Commission on the Reduction of Poverty, and they were very impressed, folks around the table, and inspired by it. And so there could be a possibility when we talk about both early child education as well as programs like this, that the city might be willing to begin to look at more creative ways of providing funding. But it started out as the United for Children initiative in this one particular community where we're really working to develop a model for birth to college success. And so I just think that's important to put it in context.
Well, I think that it's great that you're rolling it out long-term, trying to determine a model that you might be able to see, having looked at the results and look at the statistics, that that's an excellent way to do it. I appreciate that.
With that in mind, we do have some things for reading materials because you don't get enough. They have Sarah Bishop's business card because you are correct. Sarah is really the backbone of the backbone to make this happen. But in it, we have some, the first 8 years, it's a document by the AEKC Foundation, Annie Casey Foundation, about the first 8 years and how important they are. And if you read through this, you will see that United for Children is actually exactly what they're talking about, in the sense that if we're really going to have interventions for children, they need to be long-term. We can't, you don't go in and do one little intervention and walk away and think that you've changed a child's life. That this is an ongoing piece that we have to, as a community, not just a United Way, but as a community, to be very committed to the long term of this. And the other thing is information from the Stanford Social Review on collective impact. So it tells you the process that we're using for this, because it really is a blended funding model from a variety of different organizations within the community that make this sustainable, that we think in the long run.
Thank you. Rodney had another question.
Comment and one last question. On the comment side, Dr. Houston and I have talked about this. But one of the things I like to see in your evaluation of the model, especially around children, is looking at the costs and the performance of children that we know we have in concentrated poverty, and all the supports that are going around trying to lift that one child out of concentrated poverty, compared with a child who lives in Young's Terrace, but may attend Ghent or Taylor or some school that is economically integrated, because there's a lot of research out there that shows that we can spend a lot of time, money, energy, and effort trying to make concentrated poverty work, and we can, on the other hand, spend less money having economic integration. So to the extent that you have students in the target area that are attending other schools, I'd like to be able to see some comparison there. And then on the question side, you all mentioned principals and teachers and others who were involved with putting this together. Can you name some names of folks inside of Norfolk Public Schools that have just been a part of making this happen?
Oh, goodness.
Oh, yes.
If it's too long a list, but we don't always get to hear.
I'll
names,
look around
okay.
here first, and
Okay.
Dr. Simmons definitely came through for us with everything we needed, from transportation to child nutrition to technology. Her stamp of approval is on it. We had Dr. Charbonnet around the table, as well as now Dr. Williford. He studied it before even coming into Norfolk, so he's like the expert. But definitely our department, with Dr. Corbin's department and all of the specialists, when we were honing in on making sure the 9-to-1 academic piece, they really went through that for us, as well as the enrichment piece. Deb, Rock, and Roby, that whole crew were all at the table in the planning phase from Norfolk Public Schools.
I just wanted to hear it because I just wanted to make sure they got the kudos that they deserve for all the hard work that they did. So, thank you.
And first, thank you again, Louis and Carol and Sarah, and certainly a lot of you have done a great job with this summer. But I certainly we'll plan a time for you guys to come back and really update the board on a little history on the United for Children and how it initially started from the visits, of course, to Harlem and where we are now. I think we're overdue for a board update on that. Yes.
Okay.
Program, we should look at their benchmark scores as opposed to those who were not involved in the program, and see how they compare.
Sure will. Thank you.
And let me just pass this on then.
Thank you all very much.
Oh, thank you. It was a delight.
Now we should quickly transition into receiving a very quick update
Dr.
in
Houston.
regard to Norfolk Public Schools summer school.
Okay.
And that will,
Just 1 second.
okay.
Make sure everybody can hear because it's even hard for me to hear. So I just want to know if people can hear us or not.
Okay, so we'll all have to speak up a little louder because I think these microphones are mainly for the streaming and not for audio in the room. Correct? So we'll have to project. Speed voice, there you go.
Good afternoon. I'm here to give you an overview of the remainder of the summer programs that took place throughout the division throughout summer, and this will be at the elementary, middle school, and high school levels. As you know, okay, which way did I go? There we go. This meets priorities 1 and 2, ensuring full accreditation and increase the academic achievement. Elementary summer school program, the schools were combined into 11 elementary sites, with PB Young being a standalone site, as well as Lindenwood being another standalone site via a grant. Each site program is supervised and monitored by the principals and assistant principals. The elementary school summer program provided students with intensive instruction and reading and mathematics. The eligibility for the program, it was for grades 3 through 5, and you should see this in your, they have this, right? In grades 3 through 5, who did not pass the standard of learning assessment in reading or math, and who failed to meet promotion criteria during the regular school year. Students attending this program shall be promoted to the next grade level if the following criteria were met, and we had a grouping of criteria here from program assessments to Lexile scores. They also used Achieve 3000, not only in the summer school programming, but also in the extended day enrichment program. Summer school pass rate, you'll see here that this is your different pass rates for the reading and the math, then their enrollment versus their enrollment. Pretty self-explanatory. We serviced 1,400 students. Yes, Dr. Gabriel.
Is it a benchmark pass rate?
It was the benchmark pass rate that we used.
So we tested them before coming in,
Yes,
and then
ma'am.
afterwards, and then 78 of the 80 that were enrolled passed, and so that's what gave you the 98%.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that. 1,400 students participated throughout the city. It ranged in different numbers, as you can see, per different schools. Each school, these are just the sites of all of our schools. Each site had 2 to 3 different schools within their site, and each school had 100 slots that they could fill to send to each one of those sites. So it encumbered all of our elementary schools. The extended day summer program was a really nice coup for us because we worked with the Recreation Parks and Open Space. And the facilities that we had chosen on those other sites were sites that, for the most part, had recreational facilities. A few of those sites did not, but we didn't have facilities close enough for, so Larchmont, for example, we used Larchmont and we sent Swools Point there because they have a bigger building, which has a full-size gymnasium and nice outdoor facilities. So we did a pre-test of the students and a post-test. The percentages increase and decrease in the different assessment areas for the fitness testing. And as you can see, the areas of growth would be flexibility for the boys, trunk lift for the boys, and abdominal strength for the girls. So overall, they did very well. These numbers are very skewed because some of the students were there, some of them weren't there. You know, this was an option for them. Not all students participated in extended day. It was an option for them to be able to participate in the extended day program, which also included lunch and transportation home for the students. We utilized 9 parks and recreation facilities. In the extended day, we serviced approximately 1,200 students, NPS employees, school security officers at the 13 sites, and Sheriff McCabe supplied deputies per site at no charge. The nurses were also supplied to the 13 sites. Future programming comments were made. That it would be nice if we could have the school counselors, art, and music involved in this program. At the middle school level, summer schools held at each one of the middle schools. It was supervised by the principal and assistant principal. Provided eligible students intensive instruction in communication skills, reading, math, science, and history for 5 weeks, which is it was really 18 days. There's same criteria for them for 6th through 8th grade to be able to go and attend summer school as it was in the elementary level. The middle school pass rate, pretty successful, no cost to the participants, and the students took at least 2 courses. So of those offerings, they took 2 courses in that morning session. They did not have an enrichment session in the afternoon. They only went for enrichment academics in the morning sessions. At the high school program, grades 9 through 12, summer school is self-supporting program. The high school program is located at Maury High School for 8 weeks. It is designed for students that desirous of taking a course for the first time or for credit recovery. Follows the state guidelines for the standard of accreditation. Each semester requires the 70 hours, and it's a 0.5 credit towards the graduation requirements. Program eligibility, the initial credit, students enrolled in the classes for initial credit must take both semesters of those classes. The credit recovery program of NovaNet was a big hit. These are students that may repeat classes that they had failed, and they could go in there and they could take the online credit recovery program, which we offered just about everything that you could think of for them to be able to take, right down to a physical education class. For each credit earned, credit recovery students must demonstrate the mastery in the end-of-year course if applicable. High school pass rate, and as you can see, very successful for the most part. The fee for Norfolk residents is $200 per semester. Some tuition assistance was provided based on need. And this is for initial credit only. Yes, this is the initial credit only. We had 43 students enrolled in the driver education behind the program. 40 of the students passed, which is 93%, which is also a $200 fee to take that class. The credit recovery program, 100% success rate. These are all the different classes that we offered, all the way from English 9 through English 12, environmental science, biology. So we had quite a smattering there of students, and what they do is they come in, they log in, they take the component, they review the component, they take the test, they test out of that, and they move on until they go to the very end and they take that mastery test for that program. There was a staff for this program, and we selected teachers in the different subject areas, so there were subject area teachers there, as well as a special education support in that program as well. Cohorts, we broke it down by cohorts. As you can see, 25 of the students that participated were either summer school graduates this past summer that we had. There were 48 eligible students with 22 participants. So between this and the regular enrichment full day, regular full credit course, we had 48 eligible students to participate in graduation. So that's very high for us. That was very good. And I think NovaNet was the biggest part for that. Additional summer offerings, the transition and enrichment programs are either grant-funded or self-supporting programs designed for students who have a specific need or interest. The transition programs, the extended annual summer school year program, there were 40 students, which is known as ESY, that participated in the activities and experiences to help prevent significant regression of skills, educational, social, emotional needs of students who qualify for extended school year. At the 6th grade transition, that is a 4-day program, and that was a 4-week program. There were 870 rising 6th graders who participated in this throughout the city at each of our 8 middle schools. Yes?
How many rising 6th graders do we have district-wide? Rough estimate, 2,400, so only about a third take advantage of this.
Enrichment programs, Camp Einstein was at Tanners Creek Elementary. They serve as K through 6. As of June 13, and working on students that are working on or above grade level. They had 250 students that participated in this program. The Summer Art Academy had 19 students. They participated in the program at Bayview. We picked sites where buses were already going to, so it made it much easier with transportation. Getting ready for algebra, that was at Maury High School at the summer school site. There were approximately 50 7th and 8th grade students that participated in that program to prepare them with better skills, to sharpen their skills for algebra. Junior University, there were 92 students, 6 through 8, that participated in this program. Advanced Placement Program, there were 54 students that participated in this program to help hone their skills in on, especially if it's the first time that they're going to be taking an AP class, to help them to prepare for the rigor in that program. School nutrition, meals were delivered to 54 sites. We served over 84,000 breakfasts, 103,000 lunches, and over 2,500 snacks. And that snacks is just the snacks from school nutrition. That doesn't include the snacks that Dr. Savigny and I provided for the enrichment program, the after school. My car often smelled like fruit snacks.
Yes, it did.
And as far as transportation is concerned, they provided over 100 routes for each of our students to be able to get to these programs, so that the offering is there. That was not an excuse for them to not be able to participate. And budget, total expenses for all summer opportunities to include a little over $1 million, which included the salaries, benefits for the teachers, teacher assistants, site leaders, bus drivers, custodians, as well as transportation costs. Each of the elementary sites were provided instructional supplies for the teachers to have on site. And of course, you have heard that it was approximately $150,000 for the United Way program. 3,100 summer school students, 456 enrichment students, 40 driver ed students, 40 ESY, 870 6th grade students. So we serviced a little over 4,500 students this summer.
All right, thank you, Deb.
Absolutely.
Questions, comments?
Just a couple.
Okay.
I think it's outstanding. My daughters always did junior achievement, and I think some enrichment as well. On the, 2 questions on the assessment piece. So it mentions that a student has passed an end-of-program assessment, or a teacher and summer school principal provide documentation of students performing on grade level. So we talk a lot about rigor. Can you describe the difference between what the student was exposed to during the year that put them in a position where they didn't meet the criteria that brought them to summer school, versus what they did in summer school and the assessment that they took that then would allow them to move on to the next grade?
designed a pre-assessment and a post-assessment to go with every grade level for summer school, so that as students entered summer school, they were given a diagnostic pre-assessment so that we could determine the areas that those students needed to hone in on, so that they could quickly, within that time span, master their academics necessary to progress to the next grade level. So students were given two options, or actually teachers and administrators were given two options in terms of determining if students could be promoted to the next grade based on summer school. They could either pass that end of the summer assessment, which was a comprehensive end of course type assessment that factored in all of the power standards or all the skills that students should have mastered during the previous school year. So they could pass that, or they could demonstrate growth sufficient to the administrators in the building, the administrative team in the building, on a multiple set of indicators. If, for instance, a child was not there the last day, or he or she just that day did not do well on that test. We tried to allow an option for growth overall to be factored in, so that the portfolio, so to speak, of students could be attributed to growth. And I will have to go back and pull those numbers, but if I'm remembering correctly, 99% of the summer school components were, it was that pre and post assessment. They were very isolated incidents of students where we had to actually look at that portfolio to determine progression.
And then on the NovaNet, I'm familiar with that, and the results are outstanding. But it's always bothered me that that a child could spend a year in the class and not earn the credit, and then go to the NovaNet program during the summer. I mean, and I'm all for technology-enhanced learning, but somehow it seems a little awkward that you can go and sit in front of the computer and follow certain steps and go through the stages, and the next thing you know, that 100% of the students all earned credit. So there's no question there, but I just think it's something we need to look into to make sure that whether the children are going through the assessments during the summer or through the NovaNet program, that they are getting the rigor that we talked about, so they are truly prepared for the next level.
Right. I know we're pressed for time, but I would like to comment on that quickly if the board doesn't mind. NovaNet is an approved provider through the Virginia Department of Education in regard to our standards of learning. So we have to remember that NovaNet, the way that we used it this summer and that we're using it now, is specific to credit recovery. So that means that children have already taken the class once and were not successful. So they're coming back for a second time to encounter that curriculum. So when they enter the course, they're given a diagnostic that is specific to the standards of learning. It determines which standards they have mastered and which they have not. So using the terminology that Ms. Rock did a few minutes ago, students then complete the modules that are associated with the standards they haven't mastered on the computer. And in a proctored environment, so when they're testing, there's an adult or a teacher in the room to monitor that. So students complete those assessments, and then they complete the end of course assessment or the final exam, which is a comprehensive assessment over all of that curricula, and they have to also pass the end of course if that's appropriate for the specific class. So they're demonstrating mastery multiple times, and our ultimate goal for students is to demonstrate mastery of the curricula, and that's what this provides children to do.
Okay, Ms. Doyle?
Just two quick comments. Deb, I want to thank you for your work on this, because I was on the RPOS commission when this was being, I guess, considered early on in the stages, and Deb and many folks in administration were really instrumental in making this happen. And I encourage us to work more closely with RPOS, because I think that they are good partners, and we can do a lot of good with the schools and RPOS together, not just in summer school, but even during the school year as well. So I think this is a good pilot for us to start on in terms of how can we collaborate with RPOS better and use their facilities and have them in turn be partners with us in the school system.
We're having a training coming up for the RPOS staff for Achieve 3000.
Good.
So they can use them right in their computer labs, right within their facilities. Since the students already know their codes and they can go right in, they can go in there and do it as well, and they can use it as a tool. So we'll be doing
And you
the
were instrumental in
training.
getting that into the rec centers this summer for these programs as part of this, so thank you for that.
Any other questions on summer school? Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Now, as we prepare to transition to our strategic plan report, a couple of thoughts I would offer quickly. First thought, you know, I'm from down there in Florida where we have a lot of water, a lot of bridges. And in some of those areas, there's a sign, especially if you're driving from Miami down to Key West, that says, check gas before bridge, because there are no gas stations on the bridge. So we're about to go into a 3-hour part of this agenda. If anybody needs any gas, you need to let me know now, and we'll pull over. Or we're gonna be on the bridge in just a second, so. I stop every hour, every 45 minutes. So I just need to know, well, I think
He's gone already.
he's demonstrating now. So let's take 5 and really take 5, and so we can push on from here. Okay?